If you've ever trusted someone so completely you ignored the quiet warnings, this story is for you. I found out my husband wasn't just betraying me. He was bringing it into my home, and one small notification changed everything. Stay with me, because what I did next wasn't loud, but it was final. Tell me where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you're ready for the truth no one prepares you for. The notification came through while I was standing in line at the cafe, one hand around a paper cup I hadn't paid for yet. Front door, motion detected. I almost ignored it. The house caught everything. Delivery drivers, squirrels, the neighbor's dog. I tapped it anyway, more out of habit than suspicion, and the screen filled with my own front porch. Then I saw her. She didn't hesitate. She didn't knock. She stepped into frame like she'd done it before, fingers moving fast over the keypad, shoulders relaxed, hair tucked behind one ear as if this was routine. The door unlocked on the first try. The timestamp was wrong for any excuse. Middle of a workday. I was supposed to be 2 hours away at a client meeting that had been canceled last minute. He didn't know that. I watched her kick off her shoes. I watched her pause to straighten a picture frame I had hung myself. I watched my front door close behind her. The barista called my name. I didn't move. My hand was shaking so hard the coffee sloshed over the lid and burned my thumb, but I didn't feel it. I replayed the clip, then again. I zoomed in until the image pixelated, as if clarity would somehow soften what I was seeing. 14 years of marriage ended in 12 seconds of footage. I paid without looking at the register, walked out, and sat in my car with the doors locked. I didn't cry. That surprised me. What I felt was something sharper, like every soft assumption I'd ever made had just snapped back into place and cut me. I drove home on instinct, didn't text, didn't call. I needed to see his face when he realized the ground had moved. The neighborhood was quiet when I pulled in, the kind of quiet that feels curated. Lawns trimmed, blinds half drawn, cars parked just so. I didn't park in the driveway. I stopped at the curb and sat there for a full minute, my phone in my lap, the video still open. Proof doesn't disappear if you keep staring at it. I walked up to my own front door and rang the bell. I heard movement inside. Footsteps. A pause. Then the door opened and there he was, my husband, wearing the navy button-down I'd ironed that morning, eyes widening just enough to tell me everything. "Hey," he said, too fast. "You're back early." Behind him, over his shoulder, I saw her reflected in the hallway mirror. Barefoot. My hallway. My house. I stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. "What is this?" he asked, already shifting, already calculating. I held up my phone. "You tell me." The silence stretched. She appeared then, hovering at the edge of the hallway like a child caught where she didn't belong. She looked younger up close. Not fragile, careless. She opened her mouth to speak. "Don't," I said, and she stopped. My husband laughed once, a reflex. "This isn't what it looks like." I turned my phone so they could both see the paused frame, her hand on the keypad, the door mid-swing. "That's my door," I said. "That's my code. And that's not your first time using it." She looked at him then. He didn't look back. A neighbor's garage door opened across the street. Another door farther down slammed shut. Sound carries in quiet places. I raised my voice just enough to make it carry too. "How long?" I asked. He lowered his tone, stepped closer. "Let's not do this here." Answer the question. She shifted behind him, and that was it. The way she used him as cover. Something clean and final clicked into place. 6 months, he said. "It started as work. I never meant—" "Stop," I said. "You meant every part that required planning." He reached for my arm. I stepped back. At that moment, Mrs. Henson from 2 houses down walked past with her phone out, pretending not to stare. Across the street, someone paused mid-unloading groceries. My humiliation wasn't loud, but it was visible. That mattered. I turned to the woman. "You knew he was married?" She nodded, eyes on the floor. You knew this was my house. Another nod. I faced him again. You brought her here. He swallowed. I thought you were out of town. That was the first honest thing he'd said. I smiled then, just a little. That's what you miscalculated. I stepped back onto the porch and turned so the doorcam could see all of us. I held my phone up, tapped once, and let the video play out loud. The sound of the keypad beeped in real time, echoing between us. His face drained of color. You recorded me? He asked. No, I said. You recorded yourself. I took my keys out of my pocket and set them on the porch table. I'm leaving. You'll get a message from my lawyer before sunset. Do not move money. Do not touch my things. Do not speak to our daughter until I say so. He stepped forward, panic breaking through. You can't just walk out. I met his eyes. I already have. I walked down the steps, every sense sharpened, every step steady. I didn't run. I didn't look back. I felt eyes on me, felt the weight of witnesses, felt the story forming before I even reached my car. I sat behind the wheel and let my hands rest there for a moment. This wasn't the end of my marriage. This was the beginning of something else. I started the engine, pulled away from the curb, and made myself a promise I would keep. He took my trust. I was taking everything else. I didn't marry a reckless man. That's what made it worse. When I met Colin, he was careful in the way people mistake for integrity. Thoughtful pauses before decisions, long explanations about responsibility. He said things like long-term and stability and doing things right. I was 24 and believed that kind of language meant safety. We built our life in increments. No leaps, no drama. I worked full-time while he shifted careers, took on consulting contracts that paid late and demanded weekends. I handled the bills, the calendars, the quiet math of making one income stretch like two. When he talked about risk, I was the one who buffered it. The house in Plano wasn't an accident. It came from my inheritance, money my grandmother left me with instructions to be careful. I didn't dump it into anything flashy. I used it as a down payment, locked the rest into accounts with my name on them, and told myself I was protecting our future. He thanked me, kissed my forehead, called me smart. Our daughter was born in the middle of his first real success. I scaled back my work. Not fully, just enough to be present. I became the person who knew which teacher liked emails and which preferred calls, which foods caused headaches, which silences meant something was wrong. I believed in being steady. Looking back, the warning signs were there. I just filed them under stress. The late nights started small, then became predictable. He guarded his phone more closely, turned the screen away without thinking. New passwords, new explanations. He started correcting me in public, tiny things, like he needed to establish a version of reality where I was less certain. There were also the compliments. Sudden, exaggerated, ill-timed. You've been amazing lately, he'd say after forgetting an anniversary or missing a school event. I accepted them because I wanted to believe effort counted more than presence. The money changed too. He insisted on handling more of it himself. I let him, partly because I was tired, partly because he framed it as growth. I still kept records. I always kept records. What I didn't keep was suspicion. Not enough of it. The day after I walked out, I stayed in a hotel 15 minutes from our house and slept for 4 hours, like my body had finally been given permission to shut down. When I woke up, there were missed calls, messages, apologies already starting to reshape themselves. I didn't respond. I drove to my sister's place instead. She didn't ask questions when she opened the door. She took one look at my face and pulled me into her kitchen, handed me coffee, sat across from me like she'd been waiting for this moment longer than I had. "Show me," she said. I played the footage. The door, the code, the ease. She didn't gasp. That scared me more than if she had. "How long?" she asked. "I don't know." She nodded slowly. "I think you do." I thought about the nights he'd come home distracted. The sudden interest in clothes I didn't recognize. The way he'd started scheduling meetings that never seemed to require notes or follow-ups. 6 months, I said. It landed heavy but solid. My sister leaned back. That tracks. I stared at her. You knew? I suspected, she said carefully. I didn't have proof. And you didn't want a theory. You wanted certainty. She was right. I'd always wanted certainty. It was how I justified patience. That afternoon, I picked up my daughter from school early. I told her we were having a girls' night somewhere different. She didn't question it. Kids know when not to. Later, after dinner, after cartoons, after brushing teeth in a bathroom that wasn't ours, she sat cross-legged on the bed and asked, "Are you mad at Dad?" I told her the truth without cruelty. Yes, and I'm protecting us. She nodded, absorbing that like a fact instead of a wound. Then she said something that removed any remaining doubt. He's been bringing someone here, she said quietly. When you're gone. The room went very still. How do you know? I asked. I heard her once, she said. And I saw her shoes by the door. I didn't tell you because Dad said it was complicated. My chest tightened, but my voice stayed even. How long ago? She shrugged. A while. That was the moment the stakes locked in. This wasn't just betrayal of me. It was exposure. Risk. A choice he made knowing our child was in that house, knowing the lines he was crossing weren't abstract. I hugged her then, held her longer than usual, and made another promise. This one not about revenge, but about containment. Whatever came next would be controlled, legal, precise. Later that night, after she fell asleep, I sat alone and reviewed every account, every document, every decision I'd ever made for that family. None of it was accidental. None of it was shared equally. He thought betrayal was the worst thing he'd done. He hadn't yet seen what preparation looks like when it finally has a purpose. By morning, the shock had burned off and left something clearer behind. I wasn't spiraling. I wasn't debating. I wasn't asking why. I was organizing. I woke before my daughter, sat at the small hotel desk, and opened my laptop with the calm focus I used to bring to quarterly reviews. The difference now was urgency. Betrayal doesn't require rage to be effective. It requires timing. First call, the lawyer. She came recommended by a woman I trusted who didn't soften her voice when she spoke about outcomes. I told her exactly what I had: door cam footage, account histories, inheritance documentation, messages already starting to roll in. She listened without interrupting. Do not go back to the house yet, she said. And do not respond to him. I wasn't planning to, I replied. Good start. By noon, temporary restrictions were in motion. The accounts tied to my inheritance were locked down. The joint credit line was frozen. Automatic transfers rerouted. I didn't empty anything. I documented. Precision matters more than drama. While the paperwork processed, I went to the house with a police escort, not to confront, but to inventory. I packed only what mattered: personal documents, my daughter's records, photos that couldn't be replaced. I ignored anything that could be labeled sentimental but expensive. That wasn't the point. He wasn't there. That was intentional on his part. He still believed silence could delay consequences. It couldn't. I called the realtor next. She didn't ask why. She asked how fast. Quiet listing, I said. No signage yet. Understood. By the time my daughter was settled at my sister's that evening, my husband finally found a way through. He called from a number I didn't recognize. I just want to talk, he said, voice unsteady. You're moving too fast. I'm moving on time, I replied. You're overreacting. No, I said calmly. You underplanned. There was silence on the line, then the sound of him breathing like he'd just realized the floor wasn't where he left it. You can't shut me out, he said. I didn't, I replied. You walked out months ago. He tried apology next, then blame, then nostalgia. I let him cycle through all of it without interruption. When he finished, I said, any further communication goes through my attorney. You think you've won already? He snapped. I looked at the list on my screen. Tasks completed, confirmations received, Next steps cued. No, I said. I think I've started. I ended the call. Later that night, notifications rolled in. His access blocked. A transaction declined. Another. Confusion turning into alarm. I didn't feel satisfaction yet, just alignment. He showed up at the house the next morning while I was there with movers. His car pulled in fast, careless. He stepped out like a man arriving at a misunderstanding instead of a dismantling. "What is this?" he demanded, gesturing at the boxes. "Logistics," I said. "You're selling the house?" "I'm selling my house." He laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. "You can't do that without me." I handed him a folder. "Read the first page." He didn't. He just stared at it like it might bite. "This is insane," he said. "You're going to regret this." I met his eyes, steady. "I regret not doing it sooner." That was when his face changed. Not anger, not arrogance, but something like fear. Because for the first time since I'd known him, he wasn't ahead of the story. And he could feel it. Consequences don't arrive all at once. They ripple. Quiet at first, then impossible to ignore. The first sign was financial. By midweek, his cards started declining in places that mattered to him. Business lunches, travel bookings, subscriptions he assumed were untouchable. He called twice from his office line. I didn't answer. When he finally left a voicemail, his voice was measured but tight, like someone trying to sound reasonable while standing in a burning room. "There's been some kind of mistake," he said. "My accounts aren't working. We need to fix this before it affects—" The message cut off. I deleted it without listening again. The second consequence was social. People notice when a woman leaves quietly but decisively. When she doesn't cry in public. When she doesn't ask for sympathy. When she simply changes locations and locks doors behind her. By Friday, I started getting messages. Not questions, just check-ins. Neutral language. Thinking of you. Let me know if you need anything. The kind of texts people send when they already know something has happened but don't want to say it out loud yet. I said nothing. Silence lets other people do the work for you. The woman from the door cam. Her name surfaced faster than I expected. She worked in a related industry. Not close enough to be harmless. Not far enough to stay invisible. Someone forwarded me a screenshot of her social media. A caption edited. A comment thread abruptly locked. That afternoon, my sister called. She got asked to leave a project, she said. Unofficially. I didn't ask how she knew. Information moves faster than intention. At home, what used to be home, my husband was discovering the limits of confidence without access. The mortgage payment came out of an account he could no longer touch. The utilities stayed on because I'd planned for that. The silence inside the house, though, wasn't something he could reroute. He tried calling my sister. She blocked him. He tried calling my mother. She sent him a single text. "Do not involve me." Family loyalty has a way of snapping into place when someone crosses a line that isn't negotiable. The third consequence was professional. His consulting firm relied on stability, image, discretion, trust. Nothing about public scandal helps that. I didn't leak anything. I didn't have to. His distraction did enough damage on its own. Meetings canceled, deadlines missed. A partner asked questions he didn't have answers for. The illusion of control cracked just enough for other people to start noticing the fractures. He came to my sister's house unannounced that Saturday, parked across the street like a visitor waiting to be invited back into a life that no longer existed. I watched him from the window, my daughter beside me, her hand wrapped around mine. "I'll handle this," I told her. "Stay here." I stepped outside. He looked thinner already. Not physically, something else. Like a man realizing the version of himself he'd been selling wasn't transferable. "You're turning everyone against me," he said. "I haven't spoken to anyone," I replied. "That's not true." "It is," I said evenly. "People don't need instructions when the behavior is obvious." He took a step closer. I didn't move. "I made a mistake," he said. "I ended it." I waited. "She doesn't matter," he added quickly. You do. I held his gaze. You brought her into our house while our daughter was sleeping. He flinched. That's not a mistake, I continued. That's a decision. His voice rose, panic edging through. You're destroying my life. I tilted my head slightly. No, I'm refusing to carry it anymore. He reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. I can fix this, he said. We can make a statement. Get ahead of it. I smiled, small and controlled. If you make a statement, I'll release the footage. The color drained from his face. You wouldn't, he said. I haven't yet, I replied. That's the difference. That was when his voice broke, not theatrically, genuinely. Please. I felt nothing move inside me. No satisfaction, no cruelty, just clarity. You should leave, I said. If you come back here again, my attorney will handle it. He stood there for a moment longer, then turned away like someone who finally understood that persistence wouldn't reopen a closed door. That night, my daughter asked, Is he going to be okay? He'll survive, I said. But he won't control the story anymore. The next morning, he sent a message through his lawyer asking for mediation. By then, the consequences had already stacked too high for negotiation to reset them. This wasn't about punishment. It was about momentum. And once momentum shifts, it doesn't need permission to keep going. The invitation came through his lawyer. Family mediation, they called it. Neutral ground, witnesses, a chance to show good faith. I agreed because timing matters, and because public spaces have rules he'd forgotten how to follow. The setting was a private dining room at a well-known restaurant just off the tollway. Glass walls, frosted but not opaque. You could see shapes moving, hear the low hum of other conversations. Respectable enough to feel safe, visible enough to be dangerous. He arrived early. I arrived on time. He stood when I walked in, already performing. Suit pressed, smile ready. Across from him sat his parents. To his right, like a poorly thought-out accessory, the woman from the door cam. She wore something conservative, hair pulled back, eyes flicking to the door every few seconds like she was mapping exits. I took my seat without greeting anyone. This is inappropriate, I said calmly, glancing at her. But it's efficient. His mother stiffened. His father looked at the table. We're here to resolve this, my husband said quickly. As a family. I nodded. Then let's speak honestly. He launched into an explanation he'd clearly rehearsed. Stress, distance, miscommunication, personal failure framed as mutual neglect. He never once said my name. He never once looked at our daughter's empty chair. When he finished, there was a silence he expected me to fill with emotion. I didn't. I opened my folder and slid a single page across the table, to his parents. It wasn't financial. It wasn't legal. It was a printed still from the door cam, timestamp visible. Their son's front door open, a woman entering barefoot. His mother's breath caught. His father's jaw tightened. That's our house, his mother said. Yes, I replied. While our granddaughter was upstairs, the woman shifted sharply. I didn't know. I turned to her for the first time. You used the code. Her mouth closed. I looked back at him. You brought your affair into our home. That's not a marital issue. That's a character one. The room felt smaller. The sounds from the restaurant outside pressed closer. His father spoke quietly. Why are we seeing this now? Because, I said evenly. He's been asking for mediation instead of accountability. My husband's voice rose. You're humiliating me on purpose. I met his eyes. No, I'm being accurate. The woman stood abruptly. I didn't sign up for this, she said, already gathering her bag. You told me everything was handled. He reached for her wrist. Wait. She pulled away. I'm done. She walked out without looking back, heels clicking loud enough to draw attention from the other tables. A few heads turned. Someone whispered. When the door closed, something in him collapsed with it. His mother looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time. You let this happen, she said. I didn't mean... That doesn't matter, she cut in. I stood then, slowly, deliberately. This meeting is over, I said. You'll hear from my attorney. Any attempt to spin this publicly will be met with documentation. Any attempt to pressure our daughter will end visitation. He looked up at me, eyes glassy, voice low. You're enjoying this. I leaned in just enough for him to hear me, and for the glass walls to make it visible. No, I said softly. I'm ending it. I straightened, picked up my bag, and delivered the line that would travel faster than anything else said that day. You didn't lose me when you cheated, I said. You lost me when you brought it home and thought I'd protect you from the consequences. I walked out past the tables, past the turning heads, past the quiet recognition that follows truth when it's finally said out loud. Behind me, there was nothing left to defend, and everyone in that room knew it. He didn't disappear after the restaurant. He rebranded. 2 days later, his version of the story started circulating in the way these things always do. Carefully worded, indirect, plausible enough for people who wanted to believe him. He framed it as a mutual breakdown, stress, distance. Two good people who grew apart. No details, no names, just enough softness to blur the edges. He told his partners he was dealing with a private family transition. He told friends I was being unreachable. He told himself control could be restored if he spoke calmly and often enough. What he underestimated was timing. By the time his narrative went public, the groundwork was already laid. I didn't counter it immediately. I waited. Let his version settle just long enough for people to start repeating it. Then I released facts. Not emotionally, not angrily, just accurately. My attorney handled the first move, a formal filing that made certain claims impossible to deny. Dates, access, property documentation. The door cam footage was referenced, not published. The implication was enough. The second move came from someone else entirely. A former colleague of his, someone who'd been quietly pushed aside during his busy months, posted a single sentence online. I hope everyone involved is okay, but lying about timelines doesn't change what's documented. No names, no accusations, just a crack. People asked questions in the comments. He didn't respond fast enough. Then the screenshots started circulating privately. Not from me. From people comparing notes, canceled meetings, overlapping travel, excuses that suddenly lined up too well. By Friday, his consulting firm issued a bland internal memo about temporary leadership adjustments. That was corporate language for instability. The backlash didn't explode, it compressed. A hashtag appeared, small, contained, almost polite. It wasn't cruel. It didn't need to be. It linked to conversations about professionalism, boundaries, trust. The kind of topics that make sponsors uncomfortable. His name never trended. His credibility did. He tried to defend himself with a longer post, this time emotional. Apologies without specifics. Accountability framed as growth. The comments were restrained but telling. Why was she in the house? Why didn't you deny the footage? Why didn't you mention your daughter? He disabled replies within an hour. That night, he showed up at the house again. I watched him on the door cam, the same angle he'd forgotten about before. He rang once, then again, then knocked, harder than necessary, like volume could substitute for permission. I didn't open the door. I know you're in there, he said, voice tight. We need to talk. This is getting out of hand. I spoke through the intercom. You're being recorded. A pause. You're doing this to hurt me. No, I said evenly. I'm letting consequences reach you. You leaked everything. I didn't, I replied. You created it. He laughed once, sharp. You're enjoying watching me fall. I thought about the nights I'd covered for him, the meetings I'd rescheduled, the silences I'd respected. I'm not watching, I said. I'm moving forward. He slumped back against the door frame, voice dropping. I can fix this if you help me. There it was. The real ask. I won't, I said. Think about our daughter. I am. I replied. That's why this ends now. He stood there for a long moment, then walked away, shoulders tight, steps uneven. The next morning, his firm announced his indefinite leave. By the afternoon, the woman from the footage had locked all her accounts and deleted her professional profile. By evening, his lawyer requested a pause in public statements. The escalation was complete. He no longer controlled the narrative, the timeline, or the audience. And once exposure settles in, not loud, not dramatic, but thorough, it doesn't fade. It sticks, quietly, permanently. The collapse didn't look dramatic from the outside. No court theatrics, no shouting matches, just paperwork doing exactly what it was designed to do. My attorney moved faster than his expected. Motions filed. Temporary orders secured. Custody established without argument because there was nothing left to argue. The evidence spoke clearly. The timelines were clean. Judges appreciate clean. He tried to delay, claimed confusion, claimed stress, claimed he needed time to get organized. The court did not care. Assets tied to my inheritance were formally protected. The house sale proceeded without interference. His objections arrived too late to matter. He had signed enough documents over the years without reading them closely. I had read every one. He lost access first, then leverage, then narrative. Child support was calculated precisely, not punitively, just accurately. Spousal claims went nowhere. The idea that he'd been dependent collapsed under financial records that showed exactly who had carried whom and when. Custody landed where it belonged. Supervised visits at first. Not because I asked for punishment, but because boundaries had already been crossed in ways the court took seriously. The judge didn't raise her voice when she issued the order. She didn't need to. My daughter took it better than I expected. Children don't mourn illusions the way adults do. She adjusted quickly to a life that felt calmer, quieter, safer. The absence of tension mattered more than the presence of explanations. The family fallout was less restrained. His father called me once, voice low, apologetic. "We raised him better than this," he said. "I know," I replied. "That's why this is happening." His mother never called. She didn't need to. She stopped defending him publicly, stopped answering questions, stopped offering excuses. Silence can be a withdrawal of loyalty. His brother pulled out of a joint investment they'd planned months earlier. "I don't want my name anywhere near this," he said, according to someone who thought I should know. The woman from the footage vanished from his life entirely. Not out of guilt, out of self-preservation. Her involvement became inconvenient, risky. She chose distance over loyalty, the same way he always had. Professionally, he unraveled slowly. Clients drifted, contracts weren't renewed. He told people it was a break. They treated it like an ending. The firm restructured without him. His role was absorbed quietly, efficiently, without sentiment. Money tightened, then shrank. He moved out of the house before the sale finalized. Into a short-term rental he couldn't afford long-term. Then into something smaller. Temporary arrangements have a way of becoming permanent when options disappear. The last time I saw him was in a courthouse hallway. He looked older, not aged, diminished, like someone who'd spent too long trying to outrun consequences instead of facing them. "You didn't have to take everything," he said quietly. I held my folder against my chest. "I took responsibility," I replied. "You left it unattended." He nodded once, like that made sense now. Maybe it did. By the time the divorce was finalized, there was nothing left to contest. The paperwork closed like a door that had been waiting its turn. I didn't celebrate. I didn't need to. What mattered was containment, safety, finality. The fallout wasn't revenge. It was alignment, legal, financial, familial, settling exactly where it should have been all along. And when it was over, there was nothing left of him that had any claim on my life. The meeting wasn't court-ordered. That's what made it different. He asked for it through his lawyer first, then through a message forwarded with careful neutrality. He would like one final conversation. Closure. I agreed on my terms. Daytime. Public building. Glass walls. No improvising. We met in a conference room at the mediation office downtown, the same place where documents had been signed and sealed weeks earlier. Neutral carpet. Neutral chairs. Nothing soft enough to blur reality. He was already there when I arrived. He stood when he saw me, then hesitated, unsure whether standing was still appropriate. He looked thinner now, not from illness, but from erosion. The kind that happens when certainty drains out of a person slowly and doesn't come back. "You look well?" he said. I nodded once and took the seat across from him. "We have 15 minutes. He swallowed. "Thank you for agreeing to this." I didn't answer that. He tried anyway. "I needed you to hear some things directly, not through lawyers." I folded my hands on the table. "Then speak carefully." He stared at them, then back at my face, searching for something familiar. I didn't think it would end like this. "I know," I said. That was the problem. He exhaled, a sound halfway between a laugh and a surrender. "I never meant to hurt you." "You didn't mean to stop either," I replied. Silence stretched between us. He shifted in his chair. "I lost everything," he said finally. "My job, my home, my reputation. My family barely speaks to me." I watched his face, not unkindly, just clearly. "You lost access," I said. "There's a difference." His jaw tightened. "Is this what you wanted?" I leaned back slightly. What I wanted was honesty, safety, a home my daughter didn't have to share with secrets. "That doesn't justify this," he said, gesturing vaguely at the room. "The outcome. His life." "It does," I replied. "Because this wasn't one decision. It was hundreds. You just didn't think any of them would cost you." He looked down. "I made a mistake." I shook my head slowly. "You made a system." That landed. I could see it register, not emotionally, but structurally, like a realization finally assembling itself. "I still love you," he said quietly. "I don't know how to turn that off." I felt something then. Not longing, not regret. Distance. "You don't get to use love as a defense," I said. "You don't get to weaponize it after you've already spent it." His eyes filled. He wiped them quickly, embarrassed by the reflex. "I think about her every day," he said. "Our daughter. She won't answer my calls." "She knows you love her," I replied. "But love without safety isn't persuasive." He nodded, small. "I want to be better." "I hope you are," I said honestly. "For yourself." He looked up sharply. "For me?" "Yes," I said. "Not for me. Not for us. That chapter is closed." He leaned forward, voice urgent. "You don't have to shut the door like this. We could, over time, redefine something. Be civil. Friendly." "We are civil," I said. "This meeting exists. I mean, more than that." I held his gaze steadily. "You want absolution." He didn't deny it. "I can't give you that," I continued. "Because absolution implies I still carry responsibility for your peace." His shoulders slumped. "So that's it." "Yes." He laughed softly, defeated. "You're cold." I didn't flinch. "I'm clear." We sat there, the hum of the building filling the space where a marriage used to be. I checked my watch. "You have 2 minutes," I said. He took a breath, straightened slightly, like someone bracing for a final step. "I'm sorry," he said. Not the way I said it before. "I'm sorry I thought I could live 2 lives and keep the better parts of both." That was the closest he'd come to truth. "I believe you," I said. "And I forgive you in the only way that matters." He looked up, hopeful. "I release you," I finished. "From my life." The hope faded. What replaced it wasn't anger. It was understanding. I stood, gathered my bag. "This is the last time we meet like this," I said. "Any future communication stays within the boundaries already set. About our daughter only. Nothing else." He stood too, slower this time. "You were the best thing that ever happened to me." I paused at the door, turned just enough to meet his eyes. "That's why losing me mattered," I said. "And why you won't get me back." I opened the door. Light spilled in from the hallway, bright and ordinary and real. I walked out without looking back. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was leaving something behind. I felt like I was arriving. Time didn't rush in after everything ended. It settled. 3 months passed quietly. Then 6. The kind of time that doesn't announce itself, just proves itself useful by existing. The legal noise faded first, then the social static. What remained was structure, days that belonged to me again. We moved into a smaller house with wide windows and a yard my daughter actually used. No doorcam anxiety, no codes shared without consent. The first night there, she slept through without waking once. That told me more than any conversation could. She grew lighter. Not happier in a performative way. Steadier. She laughed without checking the room first. She stopped asking questions that were really warnings. Her grades held. Her friendships expanded. Safety does that. It gives children permission to focus outward instead of inward. I returned to work fully, not because I needed the money, but because I wanted the rhythm. I took on a leadership role I'd declined years earlier, back when I thought restraint was the same as support. Turns out I'd been ready the whole time. I just hadn't prioritized myself. People asked fewer questions as time went on. When they did, I answered plainly. No bitterness. No justifications. The truth doesn't require decoration. Occasionally, I heard updates about him, not directly, always filtered through distance. Smaller apartment, contract work that came and went. A version of himself still explaining instead of adjusting. He wasn't ruined. He was reduced. There's a difference. Once, at a grocery store, I saw him from the end of an aisle. He was studying labels like the decision mattered more than it did. He looked up, noticed me, froze. I nodded. Not out of politeness, out of closure. He nodded back, then turned away. That was it. No ache followed. No echo. Just confirmation. At night, after my daughter went to bed, I sometimes thought about the woman I used to be. The one who managed everyone else's comfort first. The one who believed endurance was a virtue even when it cost visibility. I didn't judge her. She did what she knew how to do with the information she had. But I didn't miss her either. The version of me who stood in that doorway months ago didn't disappear. She refined herself. She learned how to choose containment over chaos, precision over noise, boundaries over hope. I learned that betrayal doesn't destroy you unless you let it rewrite your identity. That freedom isn't dramatic, it's operational. It shows up in clean mornings, honest conversations, and decisions that don't require permission. My daughter asked me once not long ago, "Do you ever wish things had gone differently?" I thought about it carefully before answering. "No," I said. "I wish they had been honest sooner. But this is better." She nodded, satisfied. That mattered more than any vindication. Some people think revenge has to look loud to be real. They expect fireworks, humiliation, spectacle. What they don't understand is that the most permanent kind of consequence is irrelevance. He lost access to my time, my energy, my emotional labor. He lost the version of me who would soften the truth to keep peace. What I gained was space. And in that space, I didn't rebuild myself. I revealed myself. Betrayal didn't make me stronger. It showed me that I already was. And I never had to burn anything down to prove it. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it resonated, even a little, tap the hype button so more people who need this can find it. I'd really love to hear your thoughts, or your own experience, in the comments. Because you're not alone in this. And if you want more stories about strength, clarity, and rebuilding after betrayal, hit like and subscribe. I'm glad you were here.